This is The Wilderness and the Wellspring, the podcast companion to the newsletter of the same name, about the difficult times when you want to give up on your creative pursuits and the beauty of the act of creation. I'm your host, Jeff Lunt.
This is Episode 7, Facing Insignificance.
Hey there, podcast listeners. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to see the show reach a broader audience, there's a couple of things you could do that would really be helpful. The first is to share the show with someone you think would find it interesting. And the other thing you could do is consider taking a few moments out of your day and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you decide to take time out of your day to do either of those things, I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and I really appreciate it. And now, on with the show.
I don't know about you, but I feel pretty small. I'm just one person. There are, 8 billion plus people on the planet. The planet's just one of many in our solar system. The solar system is just one of hundreds of millions around stars, and our galaxy is just one of millions or billions of galaxies. I've talked about my need to be recognized for my creative work, especially earlier in my life, in my 20s, which I think is really common, and how that has changed over time into a comfort. Well, it didn't start with a comfort. It started with this drive to be seen. And then it morphed into realizing how hard it is to be somebody who's known for what you do outside of a very small circle of maybe people you work with. And then realizing that I would probably not achieve the goals that I wanted, or at least that the outcomes of those goals wouldn't look the way that I thought they would look when I started. And then after a very long time, it eventually evolved into a comfort with meaninglessness, with insignificance, with a lack of recognition or notoriety, or an awareness that anybody even knows I exist. I was talking to a friend of mine, Kyle Gergen. He was on episode 4. And one of the things that we very briefly touched on, and that I think we're going to maybe touch on in a future episode, is this emptiness, or this, what I called at the time, a comfort with fading away. We were talking about legacy. We were talking about what will happen because we were here, because we were alive, because we existed. And I mentioned that I had become comfortable with the idea of fading away over time, and that everything I had ever done in my life would eventually be forgotten. I think I've heard some concepts similar to this in places such as the concept of impermanence in Buddhism. Now, I'm not a student of Buddhism. It's just something I've heard about here and there, and done maybe a very small amount of reading on. But I would say that that's the feeling that I often get and it used to fill me with fear or dread or sadness. And now it's much more likely to remind me to just take a breath, remember where I am, what things are important to me, and that it really doesn't matter if anybody sees what I do or recognizes what I do or likes or dislikes what I do. That there's nothing about that process that needs to happen in order for the journey itself to be worthwhile. So, if you're feeling that or experiencing that, or just thinking that whatever things you're doing to express yourself, you don't feel like it's getting you anywhere, or that you're not seen for what you're doing, it can be hard. Your journey can be made harder, at least in my experience, by telling yourself that you need that recognition in order for the creative expression to be satisfying. Kyle touched on this as well. He said something to the effect of, it's not a good idea for a creative work, in order for that creative work to be quality or to come out at a good quality level, it's important not to be thinking too much about how the creative expression might be received when working on it. Because if you do that, very quickly, the desire to please other people or to build something for other people, instead of doing it because it's what you want to do and it's what you want to focus on, it has this corrupting effect where the creative act itself is altered by, the thoughts and the fears and the impression of what might be, instead of just focusing on the creativity itself. I've found that the more I embrace, the more I accept the insignificance of my own life, the easier it is sometimes just to do the creative thing for its own sake. And the more satisfying it is. And the less blocked I feel creatively, because I'm not trying to achieve on any given day any goal other than moving forward, making progress, and getting closer to finishing things. And at least for me, that's a huge relief.
This has been the Wilderness and the Wellspring podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Jeff Lunt Games. It's because my creative pursuits are creating indie games on the side. You can also share this podcast and blog with anyone you know that might find it interesting. You can find me on Substack at wildernessandwellspring.substack.com. And I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. See you next time.